Do you know what? I actually feel this bass guitar project is coming together eventually. It's taken quite a few episodes, quite a few weeks for me to get this far, but I do feel like I'm making some progress. And I would say, if you're new to this channel and you're new to this series, please go back and watch it from the start, because there's been a lot of dust gone in the bin for this guitar over the last few weeks, and a lot of twists and turns. But I think I'm getting there eventually. Well, let's hope so. Let's get going. Hello there, I'm Dave Dickens and welcome to my workshop. Now, in this episode, what I'm going to try and do is get the binding on this neck. I'm also going to fill in some gaps that I've got in the headstock there. I'm also going to try and sort out the cavity for the neck. I'm going to use this template to do that. So, got quite a bit of work to do. So, let's get going. First of all, I apologise for the whirring in the background. I've got my fan heater on because it's a bit chilly today. Now then, right, I've got my little tuna tins with some, well, this has got maple dust in, and this has got the Avancol dust in. A couple of plastic lids. I really don't like to throw anything away, and these are really useful for mixing glue, and these are really useful for storing bits in. Now then, what I do is I mix a little bit of water with the dust, because I find it actually helps avoid the dust going too dark. So I just spray a little drop on there. You don't need too much, and then a little bit of glue. Mix that all up with a knife. I'll add a bit more dust to that actually. These lids are quite useful because you can scrape it against the side, so that's quite good. Okay, so let me tackle this lighter wood first. Now, this is a problem that I've introduced myself really for not taking care when I've carved that down. Obviously this was a lot higher before I carved it down. I didn't take into account that the chisel was going in at an angle, which sort of opens up the hole when you get nearer to the bottom. So unfortunately this is going to look like it's been filled, but there's not a lot I can do about that, unfortunately. So I think this is probably the only area I can fill with a light wood. And there's a bit on the other side. I'll leave plenty on there and then I'll just sand it off. Okay, these bits have got to be done with the dark. I know this may seem a bit daft, but it's really interesting to get your waste dust and glue, make it into sort of like a ball, and just leave it to dry, just to see how it looks as a ball when it's dried. It's quite fascinating. There's one I've prepared earlier. Interesting. Okay, now the Avancol. I think that's okay. Okay, back to the plans to work out the cavity for the neck. pocket. Now then, it appears I have a slight discrepancy with my measurements. So let me show you. Now then, this is where the bolt, which is going to attach the neck, is positioned, and if I measure the between the two lines that I had for the thickness of the neck, then in actual fact they are 65mm at that point there. Now on this template I notice that it's actually 67mm, but on my neck I've actually got it at 65mm. So I really want to use this template to help me make the routing template. So I'm going to plane this down to the right width. I've always got to cut something. I managed to cut my thumb with the blade of the plane. Oh, here we go. I won't learn. I should wear my cut resistant gloves. Oh, I'm so close, I'm so close. Bit more. Well, that's taken quite a bit more planing to get that down to size, but looks like I'm there now. I have to thank Jonathan Oakley, a great guitar builder, for showing me this technique of creating a template the whole scale length. It's really useful, so you should check out his YouTube channel. It's really interesting. Right, let's look at the guitar body. I'm using the joint of the two top halves as the centre line, and I've just brought those down on each end so I can line that up with the plan. Now, I know that the nut should be there. Right. I'll prop that up a bit. Oh no, you catch me having an awkward few moments trying to work out how to get this template centered on the neck, and I'm sort of doing it with clamps. So I've clamped that end on the centre and I've got the length right against the plan. Now I need to clamp this end. Just need to centre that. That looks pretty good. I'll stick one of these on there just to hold it in place, and then put a clamp on it if I can. The aim of all this is to just put a mark on the top of the body there where the bolt's going to go through, because that can help me to register everything a bit later. So that looks all lined up. That's okay. Let's get the awl. And while I'm at it, I'm going to drill a hole down in the middle of where the bridge should be, so that's not going to be seen. It's going to be hidden underneath the bridge. I have to just move this out of the way. Actually, I can just take that off because it's gripped fairly tight, but this is going to help me register this template. Smashing. Okay, I can take all this lot off now. After a bit of toing and froing, I've got the neck template lined up using these cocktail sticks on the holes that I've drilled. This mark, there's a little tiny mark there, which is where the bolt's going to go through on the neck there, and the nuts lined up at the other end. So now I've drawn a line on this template, which is the last fret, but I'm going to have to come back a little bit because I want the fretboard just to sit on top of the body. So I'm going to go to about there, and I think that's probably, well, it looks like it's 6 mil. So if we come 6 mil back from that line, that should do the job. I have to thank Ben Crow for the trick using the protractor. I would have never thought of that. Now then, just come back from a cup of tea and had a look at the neck, and this is one of those times where you have to measure with what's there in reality rather than what you'd like it to be. And by that I mean I've just turned this over and realised that this neck is much thicker on this side. I've got to put binding on, but it's much thicker on this side, wider, than it is on this side. So I'm going to have to shave this down, which means all this work that I've done on this template is a bit pointless at the moment. Until I get this neck to the right size, I'm not going to have all the measurements that I actually need. So I think the best thing I can do now is radius this neck first, because I need to radius that before I can put the binding on, then get the binding on, then trim this down to the right size, then I can come back and get the right size for the cavity for the neck pocket. That's what I'm going to do. Now, to radius the neck, I'm going to use these blocks. I've made a video about how I make these, and I'll put a link in it in the description. But this is a 16-inch radius, and that's quite a coarse. I think it's a 60 grit paper. It's either 60 or 80, and this is a 120 grit, and again a 16-inch radius. And then I'll finish off just with a leveling beam using some 120, and then when I come to actually do the final, it will go down to 320. Now it's going to take a little while, so I shall film a bit of it, but just to give you the gist of it. Okay, let's get masked up. I've just switched the base to this neck holding jig that I've got, because I noticed using those props on either end the neck was bending in the middle, and that's not really going to do the job. It's going to give me a distorted fretboard, so this is much firmer. Okay, now for my tip of the week. Radiusing the fretboard with sandpaper on a block like this isn't the quickest thing. It's just taken me probably about an hour, perhaps an hour and a half to do my neck. But it is quite successful. The results are pretty good. Now, I made this block a while ago, and I'll put a link to the video up on the screen there as well. Very simple to make and to get the right radius. The tip I want to show you today is how I can replace this tape and glue with some double-sided tape. As you can see, that's a bit of a pain to get off. Also taken a bit of a chunk out of there, but I think we're okay with that. Let me show you a better way of doing this. First of all, I'm just going to clean it up a bit. Okay. I'm also going to clear all this up a minute. Okay, that's better. Now I've cut some 120 grit paper out ready. Now the trick here is, first of all, put on some of this painter's masking tape. Like so. Cut that off there. It says, I'll just slice that off at that end. I need to put 2 pieces on here. Because it helps if you don't get the paper twisted up underneath, but there we go. Okay, masking tape. Now then, instead of using super glue and masking tape, this is just some basic carpet tape, double-sided carpet tape. I'm just going to stick this on. Again, trying to get rid of all the lumps and bumps. Cut that off. Put another piece on there. Slice that off. Slice that off down there. And now we can just peel that back and put the paper on top of there. And this is where it gets fiddly. There we go. Place that on there. Push it down. I've got the radius block all done. And that should come off a lot easier than that tape and glue. Well folks, it's not been the most productive day, but I have radiused the fretboard and that takes quite a time. It's takes probably about an hour and a half sanding. But I really needed to sand it because I was worried that the aluminium mermaid would have buggered the plain blade, so it wouldn't have done much good. And to be honest with you, with walnut I've never had much luck trying to plane the radius into the fretboard. Anyway, so what I'm going to do next is cut the slots a bit deeper and then fit the binding, but I'm not going to do that tonight. I'm going to go and cook a Thai green curry. So I shall see you in the morning. Okay, so now it's time for my musical track of the week. And for this one, I'm going back quite a long way. because when I was in my early teens, myself and my cousin got really fired up by rock operas. They were just coming out. You got Jesus Christ Superstar, you had Joseph and his Amazing Technicolor Coat, and we decided we were going to write our own rock opera. Now then, over a couple of summers, we wrote about 16 songs, and we got together in my mum and dad's dining room, and with my dad's stereo unit, which was one of those plastic topped units with a record player on one side and a cassette tape built into it on the other, and it had a very cheap stereo microphone, and we recorded all these songs. And a few years ago I found the tape, and well, the sound quality is pretty awful, but you could get the gist of all the songs. I also found a folder with all the music in as well. I say music, it was chords and words. So I say a few years ago I decided to re-record them all, and I thought it would be really good to imagine how they would sound if they were played like by a school band. So you've got drums, bass, guitars and a few brass instruments as well, and perhaps a violin and I don't know, a keyboard, a piano. So I decided I'd have a limited set of instruments and I would record the whole lot. Now I can't sing, so all the melodies were played on the keyboard using a synthesizer or some other instrument sound. And well, I was quite pleased with the end result. I sort of like it, and I know the story of the rock opera, so every time I listen to all these songs, the whole thing plays out and I sort of imagine watching it on a stage. Anyway, I've picked one of the songs today. It's called Why Did You Tell Them? And I did add a little bit extra sparkle to it just to liven it up a little bit. But yeah, I think it holds quite well with the length of time that's passed. Anyway, I hope you enjoy. See you soon. Right then, well, I've sanded the back down. I still need to do a bit more work on the back, but yeah, it's looking pretty good. I've also made the slots a little bit deeper, and I've thinned out this binding and sanded it off. So now I'm going to stick it on the edge. So let's get going. Well, this is well and truly bound up, so she'll put it to one side and let it set. Now then, I'm really enjoying doing this series on the bass guitar, but I know at some point I'm going to run out of work on that bass guitar, and I really like to carry on this sort of video series. Hopefully in the new year we'll have the Great Guitar build off, so that'll keep us busy. But in the meantime, I thought it'd be really nice to feature a guitar that's been made by a non-professional maker, so an amateur guitar builder. And so what I'd really like is if any of you guys out there have got guitars that you've built yourselves that have got a little story attached to them that you can put together in an email to me with some photos, then I would love to feature your guitars on this channel. Now then, I thought I'd start the ball rolling by featuring my blue guitar. This is the first guitar that I ever made, and there's a bit of a story with this guitar, because about a year after I built it, I dropped it. But before I go through the sorry tale of me dropping this guitar, let me just take you through it. Now, I used Melvin Hiscock's book as the basis for this guitar. It's a really great book to start building guitars with. I obviously like the Les Paul shape, as you can see. Just some quick details about the construction of this guitar. The body is ash, the back of the neck is maple, the fretboard, I think it may be some sort of rosewood, I don't know. I bought it as a pre-slotted fretboard. And the headstock is ash, and I did a scarf joint to join that to the neck. It was made with hand tools. The body shape was cut out with a jigsaw and then shaped with a spoke shave. I had to use a jigsaw as well to cut the neck out, and the headstock. It wasn't the easiest of things to build. I didn't have a bandsaw at the time. And I didn't have a thicknesser, so all the planing was done with my electric planer and the Stanley plane that I've got. I had a lot of problems with the neck. Doing the neck on the guitar is probably one of the most fiddliest parts, in my mind anyway, and it took me a long time to get one right. And so in the process of making this neck, I probably threw about 3 or 4 others. The whole guitar took about 2 years to build, so it wasn't a quick process. And I'll be honest with you, I've never been quite happy with the way that I've joined the neck onto the body. It's glued on. I don't like that shape particularly. It's not very attractive. But that was what I could manage at the time. And coming on to the headstock, well, I obviously had one of those Dave moments when I put the machine heads on, because I put them all on back to front. So if I turn it over, you'll see that basically the spindle here is pulling away from the screw that's in there, where it should be the other way round. And I did this on the bass guitar, and that didn't work because the string pull was too much and it pulls away from the screw. But with this guitar it does work. It just means that when I tune it, I have to remember that I'm going to tune it the opposite way to a normal guitar. Now back to this accident. Well, about a year after I made it, I knocked it off its stand and the neck snapped off here from the body and took a load of the body with it, and well, I wept. My first guitar, and in the space of about a year I'd broken the thing. But I took the strings off, stripped it all down, and I actually managed to stick the neck back on. Now obviously the whole lot of the finish had to be stripped off, but once I'd glued this neck back on again and sanded it all down, well, it pretty much hid the breakage. You can just probably see a line running through there and around the corner there underneath this pickup here. And that's really the only sign that you get that this neck has broken off. And I think that was a really important lesson for me, in that when you're making something with wood like this, it's pretty much always the case that you can fix it. Another problem I had with this guitar, and I've had with a few other guitars that I've made, is the intonation. And that's caused by merrily going ahead and fitting the bridge at the scale length, but not appreciating that actually the bass strings have actually a slightly longer scale length. Now what I've done is make myself up a table where I've taken 4 of the guitars that I've got the intonation absolutely spot on. Then I've measured the distance from the nut to the bridge on each of the strings. And you can see there is quite a difference between the low E and the top E on all of the guitars. So it's important that you take that into account when you position the bridge. Now failing to do that means you end up with this rather ugly position whereby the bridge is pushed right back off the securing bolts. And what I should do, and what I've done with other guitars, is take this bridge off, fill those holes and re-drill them, and probably buy myself a new bridge, to be honest with you, because as you can see this has had a lot of wear and tear. But of course, in a way, that's part of the uniqueness of this guitar. And it plays in tune beautifully, so I don't have any problem with that. And the action is fairly reasonable. Yeah, it's a first guitar. And you know, you don't expect too much when you're starting out. But it's very satisfying when you actually build it and play it. So, I would very much like to hear your homemade guitar stories and see some photos and have a bit of the history of it, and any problems that you came across and any things that you're really proud of. I'd love to hear about them. Now if you go onto my website footstepsguitars.co.uk, there's a contact form there, so just fill that in with your email address and perhaps just a little description about the guitar you've got, and I will be straight back to you and we can arrange to get some photos on the channel. Now unfortunately I'm running out of time this week, so I've got the binding gluing and I've sanded down the back of the neck. I still need to do that template for the router, but I'm going to have to leave that till next week. Thank you very much again for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to hit subscribe. I'll see you soon, but in the meantime, stay safe.